I'm Julia. I'm the program manager for food and nutrition at the Latin American Youth Center. And today I'm going to show you how to make homemade flour tortillas. They're actually surprisingly easy. They only have 4 ingredients, 5 if you count water. We just need flour, oil, salt, baking powder, and a little bit of water. So the first step to making our homemade flour tortillas is the flour. I'm going to use 1 1/4 cups of flour. Now, when you're measuring your flour, it's really important not to pack it in there because you can end up with way too much. So I like to use a spoon to add the flour slowly. So I take a scoop, pour it in there. Let's see if I can show you this. So, got my flour. We're doing 1 1/4 cups. 1 more scoop should do it. And if you put in too much, like I just did, just hold it over your flour and use your finger to slide it off. 1 cup in our bowl and our 1/4 cup, which should just be 1 good scoop. Okay. All set. 1 1/4 cups right in there. Next, we're going to add our baking powder. Baking powder is what helps it puff up a little bit while it's baking, and it only bakes for a really short time. We're just going to use a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. I have my measuring spoons here. Got my 1/2 teaspoon. Baking powder is great because it has this little built-in shield right there. When you scoop it, you can slide it right along there and you get a perfect measurement right in there. Okay, my next ingredient is salt. It's going to be a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. That's my smallest measuring spoon. Just do that right here. Oh, too much. There we go. Right in. And I'm going to give that a little stir before I add any of my wet ingredients. Okay, next, our wet ingredients. We're adding oil and water. Now, traditionally, these would be made with lard. You can also use butter, margarine, any of those kind of solid fats, but then you'll have to break it up with your fingers. If you use oil, which is what I'm doing today, you can just add it right away with the water and it'll just disperse itself. I have canola oil. You can use olive oil, you can use corn oil, you can use vegetable oil, whatever you've got is fine. 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons. Lovely. Last but not least, we're adding our water. Just less than a 1/2 cup. Remember when you're doing a liquid measure, like this one, to set it on the table. Because if you're tilting it, you're going to get a really weird measurement. Okay, I did a little too much. Lovely. 1/2 cup. Just less than a 1/2 cup. So I'm going to not pour it all in there. Okay, all our ingredients are in there. It's not hard to make these tortillas. They don't take a lot of ingredients. A lot of them you might have at home already. And really, in a matter of minutes, we're going to have hot tortillas coming right off our frying pan. So I'm mixing this up. You can see it pretty quickly starts to come together as a dough. It was just flour and all this liquid a second ago. When it starts to come together, you gotta use your hands. I promise. Washed my hands right before we started this. Using your fingers, you're just going to start bringing the dough together. You can also start kneading. We're going to knead it on the counter in a second. The way that works is just using the back of your hand, your knuckles, to press down and then fold it over and keep doing it. You want to pick up all the flour that's in your bowl. You can see I'm wiping it around to get all those little pieces in there. And when it starts really holding together like it is now, I'm going to transfer it right to my counter. Okay, it's going right on my counter. You can push and fold, push and fold. This is kneading. You can use this for all sorts of things. When you're making bread, you would need it. And tortillas, of course, are just one type of bread. What kneading does is it activates the gluten in the flour and it builds structure. It helps it come together, and that's how you get that stretchy texture in bread that makes it so good. Otherwise, it would just fall apart. Now you can see my dough is sticking to the counter. I'm gonna add a little more flour. This recipe, it's flexible. It's okay if it's real sticky to add a little flour, and if it's really dry to add a little water. Okay, it's starting to come together really nicely. Now, if I had a ton of time, I would probably let this rest a little because it's getting a little tight from all that gluten being activated. But you don't have to. Again, it's a flexible recipe. I am gonna roll this out and cut it into pieces for my tortillas. To cut this into pieces, I'm using this guy. You can use a knife. You can use whatever you have around. You can use your fingers to just pull it apart. I'm gonna make a few smaller tortillas because that's how I like them. If you want a giant tortilla, you can make them twice as big. These guys are gonna rest right over here. And I'm gonna start with this one. Now, before I roll this out, I'm gonna turn on my burner. Be very mindful when you turn on your burner, pay attention that you know it's on, but we want our pan to be super hot for this, so I'm gonna get it started now. Okay, my frying pan is going. I'm gonna get this guy ready. So I'm using a little flour out here, and I'm just gonna pat him out. Get this guy out of the way. Okay, once it's nice and round like this, I'm gonna use my rolling pin. If you don't have a rolling pin, that's okay. You can use a jar that has peanut butter in it. You can use a drinking glass that's round. Don't let the lack of a rolling pin stop you from making homemade tortillas. So you're gonna put your rolling pin right in the middle and gently roll outward. It's tempting to roll back and forth, but you will end up with a long, skinny tortilla. The goal is to make it round. And to do that, you're gonna start in the middle and roll outward, and then rotate it every time. This also helps prevent it from sticking to your counter. If you start catching it sticking, you know that you need to add a little more flour. So every time I rotate it and I roll it out. Rotate it, roll it out. Now it's up to you how thick you want your tortillas to be. These are gonna be thicker than your store-bought ones no matter what, because those are made in a factory. They're made in a processing plant. These are gonna be thicker and they're gonna be tastier. I recommend getting it pretty thin because, like I said, they're gonna be thicker than the ones at the store. So each time you take it, you rotate, and you roll out. Now, once it gets pretty big, you can also start in the middle and roll out in each direction without rotating it, but you gotta pay attention so it doesn't start sticking to the counter. Let's see how we did. I hope it's not stuck. Phew. So far, so good. I'm gonna give it a couple more rolls. Remember, my pan is already heating up. Uh-oh. This one might not be a perfect circle, which is a good reminder. If it's not a perfect circle, it's still gonna taste good. Okay, this is looking pretty good. It's pretty thin. Now, when I'm carrying it over to the frying pan, I'm gonna carry it on the side of my hand like this. If I try to grab it with my fingers, I've rolled it thin enough that they're gonna go right through the middle. It's not gonna be fun. It's gonna fall apart and you're gonna get holes in your tortilla. Not the end of the world, but we're gonna try not to. So I'm using either the side or the back of my hand. I can feel this frying pan heat from here. It's getting really hot. Remember to be really careful with these frying pans. This is a cast iron pan. It just means that it's all made out of iron. You don't have to use that. You can use a regular frying pan, whatever you've got. And it's completely dry. There's no butter, no oil, nothing in there. It's basically a hot piece of metal that we need. So very carefully, I'm gonna place this guy right in there. If it gets a little wrinkled, and spread it out, but be careful, it's hot. Now, because if I rolled it out thin enough, it should only take a minute on the first side and like 30 seconds on the other side. As it's going, you can start to smell it toasting. It smells just like toast, like a tortilla getting toasted. And you can see bubbles starting to form. I'm not sure if you guys can see them yet, but soon you will. The bubbles are the clue that it's cooking underneath, and it's how you get that quintessential tortilla look, where there's those circles of toastedness all over. Okay, this bubble's getting big. I think you guys will be able to see that one. I think it's been long enough. I'm gonna use tongs to carefully peek underneath. Look good, it's just starting to get those marks, and flip it over. Now, you can go a little longer, but you don't want to go too long. It can easily burn because I've been getting this scalding hot. We just want it to get a little bit toasted. If you're going to eat your tortillas right away, I recommend taking a dish towel like this one, and when they come out of the pan, you're just going to fold them up inside so they stay warm. That's what keeps them pliable, that's what keeps them soft. But if you're going to eat them later, you can totally do that. You just want to let them cool completely. So just set them out on a plate or on a cool rack or on your counter. Let them cool completely and then wrap them up in a plastic bag or in some saran wrap and put them in the fridge. They're not going to last as long as the grocery store ones because those often have preservatives in it. But if you're going to hold on to them for a day or two, you can totally do that in a good Ziploc bag or some saran wrap. Okay, I'm getting distracted. Let's see how it's going. Beautiful. That guy's done. I'm definitely going to eat these soon, so I'm wrapping it up. So if you have decided to let it cool completely, wrapped it up in plastic and put it in your fridge, and then the next day you want to have them, the best way is in a frying pan. It's, again, really brief, but you get that nice toasty flavor on it, and that's going to be the best. If you don't feel like doing that, it is totally okay to use your microwave to reheat it. That is definitely allowed. Just remember that it won't take very long. Try 20, 30 seconds and see how it is. The microwave is going to get you a nice soft texture, which might be what you're going for, whereas the frying pan is going to get you the crispiness. So it really depends what you're making. If you want a quesadilla, go with the frying pan. If you want to be able to wrap it around something, maybe you'd rather go with the microwave so you can get a nice soft texture.